Welcome sa course na Engineering Mechanics, particularly Statics of Rigid Bodies. Solve pa tayo ng mga sample problems tungkol sa force vectors. So, sample problems part 2, problem number 1. Resolve each force acting on the gusset plate into its x and y components and express each force as a Cartesian vector. Yung isa pa, determine the magnitude of the resultant force acting on the plate in its direction, measured counterclockwise from the positive x-axis. So first force ay 900 Newton along the x-axis. Second force ay 750 Newton, 45 degrees measured counterclockwise from the positive x-axis. Tapos third force, 650 Newton. Tapos may triangle na nagre-represent ng direction niya. Pwede natin gamitin to triangle na to. Pwedeng similar triangles or pwedeng kunin yung angle para makuha yung x and y components. So, unahin natin yung first force na may magnitude na 900 newtons. So, components is F1x and F1y. Cartesian vector ng F1 is equal to F1xi, yung unit vector I, para dun sa x component, tapos F1yj para dun sa y component. And then yung unit na newtons. So, therefore, F1, dahil yung F1 ay along the x-axis lang, so, x component lang yung meron. Kaya, 900 Newton going to the right. Tapos, yung y component, so, equal to 0. So, therefore, yung F1 as Cartesian vector equals sa 900i newtons. Yung second force, 750 Newton, 45 degrees measured counterclockwise from the positive x-axis. So, components F2x and F2y as Cartesian vector, ito yung notation. So, therefore, F2. So, cosine, dahil yung x component ay adjacent dun sa angle given, which is 45 degrees. Tapos, yung y component naman, so opposite naman siya pag bumuo tayo ng triangle dun sa mga components, yung x and y components. So, sine 45 naman. So, therefore, 750 cosine 45, tapos yung 750 sine 45. Kaya yung x component, 530.3300, and so on. Tapos yung y component, 530.3300 din. So, tulad lang yung cosine 45 tsaka yung sine 45. Para dun sa x component ng second force, so 530.3300, and so on, newtons going to the right. Pwedeng ganito yung maging sagot. No? Ibig sabihin, may kadugtong pa siya na yung 530.3300. Kung baka hindi ka nag-round off, may kasunod pang numbers. So, ellipsis. Tapos, yung sa y component ng second force, F2, so 530.3300 din, newtons upward. So, ang sign notation, kapag going to the right, sa x components, going to the right is positive, going to the left is negative. Kapag naman y component, upward is positive, downward is negative. So, therefore, F2 as our Cartesian vector, so 530.3300i plus, so paras positive, 530.3300, and so on, j newtons. Para naman sa third force, F3, so 650 Newton, tapos may triangle na 345. So, ito yung x component ng third force. Ito naman yung y component. Tapos, bubuo tayo ng triangle. Tapos, similar triangles, no? Tulad yung values for cosine, ng mga angles, at saka ng sine ng angles, or kahit tangent, no? Ayan. So, ito yung x and y components, tapos yung as Cartesian vector. So, yung F3x over F3. So, tingnan natin sa figure, F3x over F3. Pwedeng sabihin na yung angle na nasa origin. So, cosine theta, or cosine ng angle na yun. So, F3x over F3, yung adjacent over hypotenuse. Tapos, ganun din, dun sa triangle na given, yung 3, 4, 5. So, adjacent is 4, and then hypotenuse is 5. So, tulad lang sila na magiging sagot. So, same sila ng ratio. And then, para dun sa vertical, so F3y over F3 is equal to 3 over 5. So, ganun din yung concept dun. Pwede rin na yung legs, yung ratio naman ng legs. So, f3x over f3y is equal to 4 over 3. So, solve muna natin yung x component. So, therefore, multiply both sides sa 5 tsaka sa f3. So, 5 f3x is equal to 4 f3. So, substitute natin yung 650 as f3. So, therefore, 4 times 650 over 5, which is 520 newtons. So, going to the right. Tapos, para naman dun sa y component. So, multiply both sides sa 5 tsaka sa f3. Substitute yung 650 as f3. So, therefore, 3 times 650 over 5 is equal to 390. So, therefore, y component ay 390 downward yung force. So, check natin. So, f3x over f3y ba? Yung ratio is 4 over 3 kagaya nung maliit na triangle sa given. So, 520, simplify lang, divide yung numerator pati yung denominator sa 130. So, equal din yun sa 4/3. So, therefore, yung Cartesian vector, so 520i, positive dahil going to the right. Tapos, yung y component na 390 ay negative. So, dahil downward. So, okay na tayo dun sa unang hinahanap, yung pag-resolve ng mga forces into its x and y components. Para naman dun sa magnitude ng resultant. So, magnitude ng resultant, so, Fr squared is equal to Frx squared plus Fry squared. Yung Fr, yun yung resultant. Tapos yung Frx, so yun yung x component ng resultant. Tapos yung Fry, y component ng resultant. So yung Frx, so summation ng individual x components ng mga force. Yung Fry naman, so summation ng y components ng mga given forces. So, 900 plus 530.3300 plus 520. Hindi pala ito na-store kanina. So, pwedeng gamitin na lang natin na 750 cosine 45 degrees. Tapos dito, so Fry, so walang y component. Yung first force, so 0 plus yung 750 sine 45 plus negative 390 dahil downward yun. So, substitute natin. So, 900 plus 750 cosine 45 plus 520. So, store na lang natin to sa A. Tapos, yung 750 sine 45 minus 390. So, store na lang natin sa B dahil gagamitin pa. So, ito yung mga values. So, x component ng resultant ay 1950.3300 na going to the right dahil positive yung naging sagot. Tapos yung y component ng resultant force ay 140.3300 upward. So, solve na natin to. So, square natin. So, a squared plus b squared. So, 1955.3721. Yun yung final answer. So, 1955.3721 newtons. Para naman dun sa direction, measured counterclockwise from the positive x-axis. So, dahil kita naman dun sa components na going to the right tsaka upward, so magiging ganito yung figure. Tapos yung FR yun yung kulay green sa drawing. Tapos triangle. So, therefore, tangent theta or yung direction ng resultant force ay Fry over Frx. So, tangent theta ng Fry over Frx. So, therefore, theta is equal to arctangent ng Fry over Frx. So, substitute lang sa equation. So, arctangent ng yung nakastore sa B over A. Therefore, angle ay 4.1155 degrees counterclockwise from the positive x-axis. So, ganito yung magiging notation niya for the final answers. Problem number 2. Express each of the three forces acting on the support in Cartesian vector form and determine the magnitude of the resultant force in its direction measured clockwise from the positive x-axis. So given F1, so kailangan kunin yung Cartesian vector form. So F1x, para makuha yung ratio ng x component tsaka ng given na F1, which is yung 50, should be equal dun sa ratio ng triangle na nasa given, which is 3/5. 3 dahil yun yung parallel dun sa x component. Tapos yung 5, so yun naman yung parallel dun sa given na F1. So multiply both sides sa 5 times F1. So F1 is 50, so 3 times 50 divided by 5, so 150/5 ay 30. So 30 newtons to the right yung x component. Then F1y, so ganun din. So dahil y component, so yung parallel sa kanya dun sa triangle is 4, so 4/5 naman yung ratio. So multiply both sides by 5 and F1. So 4 times 50 is 200, so 200/5 ay 40. So therefore, y component ng F1 ay 40 newtons upward. So therefore, as Cartesian vector, ganito yung form. Para naman sa F2, so F2 is equal to, ito yung para sa Cartesian vector form. So F2x or yung x component, so sin 15 dahil yung 15 angle dun sa figure ay opposite yung x component or yung parallel dun sa x component. Kaya sin yung gagamitin. So sin is equal to opposite over the hypotenuse, kaya sin 15. So therefore, F2x is equal to 80 sin 15. Yung y component naman, so F2 cosine 15 degrees. So therefore, so 80 cosine 15, so solve natin. So F2x, so 80 sin 15. So store na lang sa A. And then 80 cosine 15, so store na lang sa B. So ito yung values. So yung x component ng F2 ay going to the left, tapos yung y component ay downward. Kaya negative parehas. And then F3. So dahil along the x-axis, so yung component lang na meron ay 30 newtons, tapos yung y component ay equal to 0. So therefore, ito yung Cartesian vector form ng force 3. At yung resultant, so summation lang nung mga components. So Fr is equal to 30 minus 20.7055 and so on, plus 30 plus 40 minus 77.2740 and so on. And then J. So 30 minus yung nakastore sa A plus 30. So store na lang sa C. Tapos 40 minus B. So store na lang sa D. So therefore, our resultant force ay ito yung Cartesian vector form. So para makuha yung angle, so kailangan naman dito measured clockwise from the positive x-axis, kagaya ng nasa figure. So triangle ulit. So therefore, theta is, or tangent theta is equal to 37.2740 over 39.2944 and so on. So arctangent ng, so yung nakastore sa D over C. So therefore, angle is equal to 43.4885 degrees measured clockwise from the positive x-axis. So yung negative dyan dahil magkaiba ng sign yung fraction na nakastore sa D over C. Pero okay lang din naman yan.